back to my channel. I've just had an epic lunch. As anyone who watches my channel or knows me will know, I'm a massive foodie, so I love food and I take food very seriously. And yeah, I can't go out to eat, I can't go to pubs or anything, I can't go out. So I thought, oh, I'll bring the pub home. You know, when you can't go out, you have to bring these things home, you know, sometimes. I don't eat like this every day, by the way. This was quite, it's a treat, you know. So I made a fish finger sandwich, but like I really like, it was an Abe and Cole recipe, Abel and Cole recipe, which I found online. So it's like an epic fish finger sandwich, using jumbo fish finger. I probably actually only needed one jumbo fish finger because they're like actually quite big, but so next time I'll probably only use one. I might use two because forgetting how big they are. Sourdough bread, avocado, tartar sauce, lettuce, and some chips, because you always have chips at pubs, a bit of ketchup, and some strong tea. So yes, quite full now. It was good though. Like I say, can't go out to pubs, can't go out to restaurants, you have to bring them home. So now and again it's nice to indulge. It's significantly less expensive though than eating out. I like doing it myself anyway, because I'm in control of it. But obviously before COVID I did sometimes go out to pubs occasionally with a support worker. Okay, so in this video, I wanted to carry on talking about empathy. But before I carry on with that discussion, because I just wanted to mention something else. I just wanted to address something which I know some people seem to think about the diagnostic process in autism. Not that long ago I was on Twitter and someone said how they thought anyone could diagnose autism, like they thought that it was really easy to diagnose autism because all you have is like a criteria in a DSM, and the criteria is so simple that anyone can like diagnose autism in someone else just using the criteria. Now to me this completely misses the point and is a very kind of uneducated thing to say, because first of all there are many problems with that view, and I do believe, although this person I think is not a support, I'm not sure if they're a supporter of the NDM. I think they are actually quite critical of the NDM, but and they are generally against self-diagnosis. I think they said they were against self-diagnosis because people often don't use the criteria or something, and that if they use the criteria it would be like really easy, implying that those who self-diagnose who use the criteria are justified and those who don't use the criteria are not, sort of thing. But like I said, it's really uneducated because, well, as you know, I'm completely against self-diagnosis in all its forms. Like a done and proper thing is to get assessed. I'm trying to get assessed for dyspraxia, and like I said, I can't say I've got it because I don't know, I might not have it. And to say I did have it without a diagnosis would be completely dishonest and just really, yeah, so you do the proper thing, the honest thing, which is to go for an assessment. Until that point, you can only say you think you have something or you might have something. I don't know why it's so hard for those people to understand. And self-diagnosing themselves with a condition isn't going to get them support anyway, because other people aren't going to take them seriously. I, for one, can't take anyone seriously who self-diagnoses. So, but anyway, back to the point about the argument that it's easy to diagnose autism because all you have to do is follow the criteria and it's like easy. Well, okay, so there are several problems with this. First of all, diagnosticians do not just use the criteria. Diagnosis is not a tick box, or it shouldn't be. Obviously there's some crap diagnosticians out there who might just use the criteria, but that would not be a good diagnosis. Diagnosis is not a tick box exercise. You know, they don't just run through the criteria, see if you meet it, and then voila, diagnosis. No. Autism diagnosis is really complex. The criteria is just a guide. Clinicians use the criteria to guide them, but it's just like a skeleton of what they're looking at. So it's not the case that any old person off the street can use the criteria to diagnose autism. Seriously. Autism is a serious medical condition. Can you diagnose any other medical condition like that? Name a condition you could diagnose by just picking up the criteria and otherwise people wouldn't even need to go to bloody doctors, for crying out loud. We have doctors for a reason, for both physical and mental problems. Autism is a kind of, it's a medical problem because it affects the brain and it's neurological and it's kind of in a rather sort of ambiguous territory. It's not quite mental and it's not quite physical, it's a bit of both really. But yeah, it's a medical condition, so far as the brain is physical, I'd argue actually it's a physical condition. It's just you can't see the brain, doesn't make it any less physical, does it? But yeah, there are many physical conditions out there that aren't going to kill you and that are quote-unquote benign, and yet can still cause a lot of problems. Autism, I would say, is no less physical, it's just it affects the brain and you can't see the brain. That's the only difference. The brain is as physical as can be, as this whole psychology nonsense, going back to the idea that somehow the brain is separate from the body and this whole Cartesian dualism, when actually I'm a monist, and I think most scientists today are monists, at least those worth their salt. You understand that the brain and the body are one, and both basically interact with the other. The brain is actually throughout the body as well. But anyway, so I'm going off on a tangent. But yeah, autism is a medical condition. So, medical conditions can only be diagnosed by doctors. That's why we have doctors. Because autism is... so that's the first thing, basically. It's not just a tick box exercise. They use parts of the criteria, obviously, in screening instruments, but screening instruments, again, are just there as a guide, are just there to filter out who might possibly need to go forward for more thorough assessment. They can't say that the person has a condition, because you can only know that once you've had the thorough assessment. So it's just a good diagnosis. It's not a tick box exercise. A good diagnosis can involve hours of assessment. The other thing is that autism is a neurodevelopmental condition. So ideally, when they're diagnosing someone with autism, they shouldn't just rely on one person. It shouldn't just be you in the room. Ideally, they'd want to speak to the parents. Obviously, I guess it's difficult if the parents are no longer around. But obviously the parents are the best source of information because they can, hopefully, as long as their memory is intact, remember incidents from babyhood, toddlerhood, that the person themselves might not know about. If the parents are not available, they ideally they speak to someone else who has known the person for a very, very long time. So there might be, if a person's able enough to have a partner, that might include a partner, or a sibling. Although siblings can sometimes be a bit more biased and harder to get information from, because they particularly if they're quite close in age, because they wouldn't obviously remember when a person was really young, but still they're better than nothing if there's no parents or anything. In my case, obviously both my parents were involved. A good assessment would involve speaking to other people who know the person really well. It might involve looking at old school reports, previous assessments, and so on. It's basically, diagnosis is a bit like a science work. It needs evidence, lots of evidence. And unfortunately, the person themselves who thinks they might have a condition is not the best source of evidence. Because autism is a social condition. All medical conditions, in a sense, require evidence, but autism is being a social condition means that in order to really know if a person's autistic, you need to have other sources of evidence from other people who can report back on how the person behaves, because it's like an interactive condition. So the person with it isn't the best guide. They can say, or they think they might have it or whatever, but they could be wrong. It's kind of autism is a social condition, so you're going to have the effects are going to be felt by other people. So other people need to be involved in that assessment process. Ideally, those who are like know the person really, really, really well. So for criteria, it's just a guide that clinicians use to help them delve deeper. It's just a skeleton. So of course not anyone can take, that's so stupid, no one can take a criteria and say, oh, that person over there doesn't make eye contact, tick. Oh, that person over there has a bit of an intense, narrow interest, tick. Oh, that person over there is rocking back and forth, tick. I don't know. Oh, that person over there is giving is not giving reciprocal social interaction or whatever. Oh, they must be autistic. Well done. I'm a doctor. Oh, I haven't even gone to medical school, but I can diagnose them. God, it pisses me off. No, you cannot, mate. You seriously cannot. You're just a person off the street. You do not have the right to diagnose other people, and no one's going to take you seriously. And you're just going to sound like an arrogant narcissist if you say you can. Basically, that's my point. So no, you can't diagnose autism just using anyone should know that. You can't diagnose autism just using criteria. You just cannot. I'm sorry, but you cannot. If a clinician thinks they could diagnose autism like that, they're not a very good clinician. And they should really go back to school. And they shouldn't be diagnosing autism. If they think they can do that. So assessments take a lot of time. They require evidence, and they don't just rely on the DSM. A good clinician will also use other tests as well. Like, for example, they might administer a cognitive assessment. When I had my assessment, I didn't need to have a cognitive assessment because I'd already had one when I was at school, which basically gave them a lot of evidence already. Otherwise I would have had that when I got diagnosed. However, I did have a cognitive assessment in 2018, which was after I'd been diagnosed. But that was just because I wanted to find out if the assessment I had at school was still basically similar, which it is, and even more extreme than when it was at school. So, but yeah, cognitive assessments might be administered, not always, but again, they can provide extra information. I think they're called neuropsychological tests. In some cases, they administer the ADOS, the Autism Diagnostic Schedule, although that has obviously been a lot of criticism about that one. Unfortunately, with autism diagnosis, and something I do think needs to change, is that unfortunately it's not standardised across the country. So depending on where you live, you will get a slightly different assessment. I think personally it should be standardised because that will give a more what's the word for it? It would be better for research, and it will just ensure that people are actually being diagnosed properly and fairly. So I actually think it should be standardised personally. I'm not sure why it isn't. Anyway, moving over to video number 2 now.